All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, something that we've tried to convey here on the show since the failure of a stimulus to materialize before the election is that literally everyone in Washington is to blame. Trump did not care about stimulus till he realized his electoral results might be tied to it. McConnell has done almost everything he possibly can in order to not move one before the election and even after. And Pelosi refused to negotiate in good faith before the election because she believed doing so might help Trump's election chances. The last point has been controversial among some. It's a common talking point now. Oh, but the House Democrats passed their wish list in form of the HEROES Act, and Republicans are evil for not simply just accepting and passing it. Obviously, that is naive. But the subtext of the critique is that Pelosi at least tried to do something. Well, we finally have definitive evidence that puts that to bed. Why? Because Pelosi is so callous, she just says the quiet part out loud. During a press conference on Capitol Hill Friday, a reporter asked Pelosi exactly if she is more optimistic about a standalone stimulus bill passing now. She answered matter-of-factly that now that Biden is president-elect, she is willing to do a smaller deal. Oh, okay then. So it's confirmed. She held up a perfectly good $1.8 trillion deal before the election, which would have given people stimulus, more unemployment insurance, and more, all because Trump was president. That's the flat truth now, and it's disgusting. Because now, guess what? The leverage on the Republican side is completely gone. McConnell and the GOP are already back to singing the false tune of deficit hawkery and have released a stimulus bill which is somehow worse than their $500 billion offer from before the election. It has no checks, no extra insurance, only extends unemployment to gig workers and more for literally an extra month because, oh, I didn't know the virus is going to be wrapped up by then. Trump is too busy worrying about Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood on election fraud in Georgia to care about stimulus, and even the so-called bipartisan stimulus negotiation is only $908 billion with zero stimulus checks. That is currently the upper bound of what's possible. And as I've said here, I support it, but if it's half of what people could have had before the election, and then that is the highest number in a negotiation, you know, if anything even comes, it's going to be lower than that. So, what exactly has Nancy Pelosi's callousness cost America? Well, $1,200 in stimulus for the last 2 months as many cities began to undergo shutdowns. It cost the definitive extension of unemployment insurance to millions of precarious gig workers, and it cost the eviction moratorium for millions of Americans. It's not just her. It's an own goal from Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer, too. Both completely held the line in the lead up to the election, saying it was the HEROES Act or bust. Biden, as recently as just last week, was still backing Schumer and Pelosi's negotiations, and only now seems to have woken up to the fact he's got to get something done or his own presidency might be screwed. Take a listen to this. Change of tune recently.
I'm not alone in saying this situation is urgent. If we don't act now, the future will be very bleak. Americans need help, and they need it now. And they need more to come early next year. But I must tell you, I am encouraged by the bipartisan efforts in the Senate around $900 billion package for relief. It's a bipartisan effort.
What Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden do not realize is that karmic justice is coming. Because when $900 billion before the election is the best that you're going to get, I'm going to sit here and lay out just how screwed they are in the future and the electoral bite back that is going to come. Senate Republicans are in the mood to negotiate right now, at least nominally, because they still control the country and Trump is president. But if anything passes, then I will predict here that it will be the largest package passed in the next 4 years, especially if Republicans win those Georgia Senate seats, which I still think is probably going to happen. With a bulwark in the Senate, they will stand right in front of Joe Biden and smile when he proposes billions of dollars in aid. They'll say, that's nice, and then not a single thing will go through. Whatever does get past Mitch McConnell is going to be gutted and barely going to ameliorate the tremendous suffering in this country that has already resulted from this pandemic and economic depression. From that point on, it's basically a repeat of the Obama administration. Biden will do whatever he can with executive orders, but just like with Trump, it won't actually be enough to really do anything. And at the end of the day, Americans almost always blame people at the top of the ticket. Ask Barack Obama how it worked out for him when he went out and whined how Republicans wouldn't work for him. They just kept electing more Republicans to do so. There is very little electoral cost into being an obstructionist in a hyper-partisan times. The country will continue to bifurcate along class lines. Stagnation will set in. The Biden administration is going to grasp at straws and point to the same GDP and stock numbers that Trump does right now to talk about why the economy is great. But the reality at the everyday level for Americans is going to get worse and worse and worse. And neither party will be working for them, and they're going to get their angrier and angrier in almost every single election. That anger is going to be directed towards the people in charge, regardless of whether it's fair or not. Said here so many times, it's better to pass as much possible in the beginning so you don't have to pay 3 or 5 times more to make up the damage. But Pelosi decided not to do it in order to ensure a Biden presidency, and I hope it was worth it because it's going to be a hellish 4 years, and I think they're going to pay a big, big price. And you know, Crystal, that's where we stand right now. $900 billion is the best that we're going to get. Doesn't even have a stimulus check, has a slight increase in unemployment. It's got the nice little liability shield in there because there's no other way that any Republicans could support it, obviously, because that's what you stake your entire party on in the middle of a pandemic. But hey, look, if that's all it's going to take, you know, an extra $300 in unemployment checks, I don't want to sit here and poo-poo that. Like, that's good. That's something good. I still think there's a lot of bad stuff within the bill, and that is the upper bound of what might actually happen after all these negotiations. Everybody seems optimistic here in Washington. We'll see. Seen it before many times. But if $700 billion is the best you're going to get, I think they put themselves in this position because you could have had, by her own admission, $1.8 trillion, more stimulus, more unemployment. I really think could have gotten us at least slightly more towards that finish line of June to August, whenever the vaccine or whatever is coming. And now they've shot themselves in the foot. They are going to inherit this limping along country largely because at least half of some of their own making. And I think they're going to pay a price for it. They already did with many of these congressional negotiations.
I mean, you lay out a very dark scenario, and I wish that I could say that a single piece of it was wrong. But I don't think so. I mean, listen, this was so clear and obvious what was going to happen from the beginning. You knew that the minute the election was over, basically no matter who won, there was going to be zero leverage left. Zero leverage. Actually, the only leverage that is left is that they want this frickin' damn corporate liability shield. Like, that's the only piece that you actually have to work with. They know, the Senate Republicans know, they can't get that on its own because it is just too grotesque of a giveaway to corporate America when you're doing nothing for anybody else. So that's the only piece you have to work with, is the fact that they want that particular thing. And so, yeah, it was utterly predictable that after the election, you would have a much, much, much worse deal on the table than you did beforehand. We tried to say it here. There was all of one member of Congress, Ro Khanna, who, on the Democratic side, who agreed with us. And look, it was never clear that the Senate Republicans would actually go forward and pass that 1.8 trillion.
But at least
maybe
try.
They did, maybe they didn't. But at least try. At least try. Because we can see people are falling off the cliff every single day. Not just on the economic numbers, but on the numbers of mental health, depression, anxiety, suicide, drug addiction, all of these things. And you all just sat by and played your political games. It is unforgivable. And anyone who thinks still in their head somehow that Nancy Pelosi is like this brilliant master negotiator, are you kidding me? And this is the slop that you're trying to settle for now? Trying to settle for. They may not even get that.
Good luck. Yeah, no, for real. And look, there's already been a lot of talk. I think it was John Thune already shot down the $908 billion. He's like, well, you know, this thing has state and local aid, and that's a no-go for Republicans. So, okay, that's like $200 billion right there. That brings it down to $700 million. So we're talking about more paycheck protection. And again, look, paycheck protection is good. Unemployment insurance is good. But while you were gone, we had a massive jobs miss, one of the biggest jobs miss that we've had in a long time. Still 700,000 people applied for unemployment insurance. And everything is trending downward and downward and downward. Now half of, all of California, some 35 million people are back on stay-at-home lockdown orders. And things are not good. And the level of fiscal support is completely not there. Whatever passes is is going to be nothing. And like I said, I think they played themselves dramatically because I can see it so clearly. McConnell and them are going to stand in front. They're not going to pass anything major. Biden's going to try and do some executive orders. Within a year after vaccines, everybody will move on and everyone will forget, just like the Great Recession.
Yep.
And they're going to be like, oh, see, the stock market is great. That's that was the perfect emblem of the Obama economy. They're like, no, see, the unemployment rate has actually, has gone down, even though like millions of people dropped out of the workforce. I see the exact same scenario.
It's so true. The best we can actually hope for is nothing.
Yeah.
Because the thing that we may end up with is now we got to deal with the deficit. Let's have a bipartisan deal to cut. Freaking Neera Tanden can lead the charge to cut Social Security and Medicare again, I mean, seriously, the best you can hope for is nothing. Because if they actually do something together, it is likely to be worse than if they just left it alone at this point.
There you go. All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.